In America, we often ask them to make a choice. Mixed folk. You're either gonna be with us or you're gonna be with them. And I was thinking about how the journey towards that choice that we often put in front of them is one that we don't really care enough about to talk about it, to engage with it, etc. And I think that in part also makes us hate Sydney.
When we think of what Blackness is, we have these identifiers. And I've often struggled going, what's culture versus what is a stereotype? Like, what's the difference between the two? And there are so many times where I could say this is cultural that someone can also go, no, that's actually just you being stereotypical. It isn't to say it's this or it's that, it's all of that. It's all of that. And either you are part of all that or you're not. It's an inclusivity.
And how do we be aware or become to be aware of those naturally forming limitations?
Mystical is the only word I can think to describe it. And it's a feeling. You heard me write this in my book. We are the feeling folk.
I think about what you were describing in terms of like nature being inside of the design. What is the barrier to humans imagining things that way?
Nothing in the world or in nature is designed to be in stasis forever. And so we are in a constant state of evolution. And right now we are, I think the goal of capitalism is to try to create a sense of stasis. That's not okay.
Who is the freest Black person you know?
I was just thinking about, in America, we often ask them to make a choice. Mixed folk, right? You're either gonna be with us or you're gonna be with them, right? And I was thinking about how the journey towards that choice that we often put in front of them is one that we don't really care enough about to like talk about it, to engage with it, etc. And I think that in part also makes us hate Sydney, right? Because we have experience with what Charlie is dealing with as Black folk. We don't have experience, or either, because like I was telling Liz earlier, knowing that we're all mixed, ultimately, right? We just aren't to that level that Sydney's dealing with. So we don't have the experience of having choice or of being presented with this idea of choice that some mulatto folk get to experience. And so it's more palatable to go through the darkness with Charlie than to go through the whiteness with Sydney.
Yeah. There's a larger, I think, concept at play. In my mind, it's when we think of what Blackness is, we have these identifiers. And I've often struggled going, what's culture versus what is a stereotype? Like, what's the difference between the two? And there are so many times where I could say this is cultural that someone can also go, no, that's actually just you being stereotypical. And so I've been backtracking in my mind. I haven't arrived to it fully.
I was going to ask you, yeah.
But I've been thinking Blackness. If I were to really wrap my head around what it means to be Black, it is the all colors folding into itself. It is an enormity. It isn't to say it's this or it's that. It's all of that. It's all of that. And either you are part of all that or you're not. It's an inclusivity. And that to me makes it to where the girl who's been passing all life is a part of her that feels, I want to be a part of that I want to be included in that enormity. The person that's voting Republican, to get better, whatever, I don't know what they're trying to get, but that, whatever that is, they're part of it, right? The queen doing hair, in her kitchen, she's a part of it. They're all a part of this enormity. And we have to remove the protective layers that were formed because of traumatic experiences in slavery that won't allow that enormity to exist. Now, I want to be clear that enormity has its limitations.
That's what I was going to ask you. How do we know its natural limitations, right, that are naturally occurring? And how do we not fall victim to the prescribed or created limitations that are fashioned and given to us, if that makes sense, in regard to Blackness, right? Because I get where you're going, right? It's this thing of enormity, and someone like her would want to, someone like her or anyone who can see it for what it is would want to be able to be involved in it. Where do those? How do we notice, and how do we be aware or become to be aware of those naturally forming limitations, and how do we stay aware or cognizant of the possibility of those ones that are fashioned for us?
I find that you use the word naturally occurring to be fascinating because nature comes with certain pathways to so almost mysticism, just by definition. You put a tree, you put an acorn in the ground, that tree is going to go different every single time. It's never going to be the same thing, but we're using natural to make rules. And that is, in a way, counterintuitive. And so I think there has to be space for what feels mystical is the only word I can think to describe it. And it's a feeling. You heard me write this in my book. We are the feeling folk. You know what I'm talking about. And it is, I don't require language to articulate it. I walk into a room and there's an energy exchange between someone and I know they're my people. I don't need a line in the sand that denotes it for me because that by definition removes my ability to feel it. Do you understand? It says, this is this, I'm telling you what this is, opposed to feel what this is and therefore know what this is. And I believe that we have the capacity as one who's traveled all over the world. And I really mean I've traveled all over. I can go into a space and know the second I walk into that space if I'm welcome. And that's what I mean.
Okay, all right. Why do I feel like there needs to be a limit? Is that because of Western socialization? But then also is an inability to feel properly a sign of disconnect with the self?
I think both.
You know where I'm going with that? Because what I think I was initially trying to say is, how do we know to trust the feeling, right? But what ultimately you might be saying, and you can please sit in this, is that if there is a reluctancy to trust the feeling, then that means you don't trust yourself.
Indeed. That's it. That's it. That's it. You found the place that I'm trying to get to.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm gonna give you one sort of a prerequisite to arriving to that feeling. If you take the equator on our planet, okay, and you go north, there's a certain point where everything is going to get really cold. It's going to be where nothing really grows.
So nice.
There's going to be not a lot of animals, and so hunting is going to be limited. You're going to be spending a lot of time indoors, looking at shadows on the wall, trying to stay warm, and they will develop a scarcity mindset. And a scarcity mindset will translate into, I need to hoard everything. It'll translate into a brutality around just as a way of being. It will translate into, I am in confrontation at every moment because of the scarcity of everything around me. Now, I want you to go below the equator, okay? And let's say you land somewhere in, I don't know, the Congo. In the Congo, at the same time that scarcity is happening, abundance is happening. You've got everything you could possibly want. If you're hungry, pick fruit off the trees. Everyone around you is full. Everyone around you is content. There's water flowing. There's animals everywhere. You feel psychologically and I think technologically able to sort of tap into the spirit because you don't have to worry about survival. You're able to tap into creativity because you don't have to worry about survival. You're able to tap into feeling things because you don't have to worry about survival. Now, when the scarcity mindset starts to migrate down and they confront or come in contact with the abundance mindset, what happens? The abundance mindset goes, dude, you can have it. And scarcity mindset goes, no, I'm taking it. I'm taking everything. Yeah. I'm taking everything. I'm splitting it up, taking everything. And what happens to the abundance mindset is it develops a psyche that becomes the scarcity. It becomes, I need to protect my stuff now. I need to hold all my feelings intact now. I need to do the same things that they were doing before we got here. Mm-hmm. You've taken on a scarcity mindset. You don't even realize it. And you don't know yourself well enough to get back to the sense of abundance, which is the precursor to be able to reach that state of heightened consciousness where you can feel things like you're supposed to. You can feel all the stuff you're supposed to.
In that analogy, where you have the equator there, is the equator like where the human should seek to be for equilibrium, or is equilibrium even something that the human should allow to codify the possibilities of human expansion? Because where I want us to go, I want to talk about clean capitalism, which is something I was thinking about off the record when you were talking about what you see in some of the places that you've lived in terms of where nature is, right? And so I was thinking, what is it that makes us not do that first? And I know we're not going to like talk about books here, right? But there's a moment in your book where Zoo is looking out of the airport and he's like basically asking, well, we couldn't imagine anything else. There's so many of us who decided to just keep this thing going. And so when I think about capitalism, right, and its place in the human experience and clean capitalism, I think about what you were describing in terms of like nature being inside of the design. What is the barrier to humans imagining things that way? Or is there even a barrier? And should we try to overcome it, right, so that we can imagine that? And is that even a worthwhile destination? Clean capitalism and or like that type of thing? Or should we be going beyond that?
I definitely think we have to go beyond it, but I want to sort of set a stage or set rules to that, I suppose.
Yeah, please.
And the first is the idea of equilibrium or a sense of stasis. Nothing in the world or in nature is designed to be in stasis forever. Okay. And so we are in a constant state of evolution. And right now I think the goal of capitalism is to try to create a sense of stasis. Mm-hmm. And that's not okay. It's not natural. It's counterintuitive to nature. In fact, to try to be like, this is it. We've set the value. This is how, like, you can't approach existing that way, because then you don't give people space to evolve. You don't get the ability for the imagination to shoot out ahead of us and create worlds before we arrive to them. You know? And so I there's so many science fiction books that I love science fiction. I just love it. And so there's so many books that I used to read that were written in like the 20s or the 40s that were projecting futures that are more significant than this one, right? Like right now, one of the most popular movies out is Dune. And when I read Dune for the first time, I think Dune was written in 1942, I think. But the first time I read Dune, and I was like, what this man is articulating with the way space travel works, the way the mind works, the way that magic works. He's taking natural things in our real world, our real mysticism, and making science out of them. He's saying that the mind has the ability to make space travel, not technology, the mind.
Yeah.
And that means that the mind needs to evolve beyond a sense of stasis. So that's first. Once that happens, we redefine what capitalism means. And in so doing, redefine what value means. Okay. Because right now, it looks like this. Someone tells you that this piece of paper has this value. And if you have enough of those pieces of paper, you can buy things based on the scale that we've determined. Mm-hmm. That determining scale, as I understand it, is based off survival needs. Food costs this, and you gotta have it. A house, shelter costs this, and you gotta have it. But it also is a mechanism to be exploitative in a number of different ways. For example, you gotta eat food, but the cheapest food you can get is this thing that's probably not that healthy for you. Yeah. Right? You can't get a house, you're probably gonna need to live in a tenement where now you don't have access to nature at all. Mm-hmm. Right? But if you have money, you can now live on that beach if you want to. Orange Beach in specific. You can now eat the food that's healthy for you. You can have farm to table if you want, right? The value now is quantified based on an individual's ability to hoard. Yeah. Which is what I'm talking about, the scarcity mindset. Yeah. So it has taken that and magnified it and made it everyone's reality. And it's fragmented us in a way that I think limits our ability to evolve. And I want that. I think change, I think it's Octavia Butler, God has changed. God has changed. And so I want change. I don't mind it. And that doesn't mean it's a pendulum. It's not swinging from one thing to the other. It's taking incremental and natural steps towards an evolution. There's a reason that the flower points at the sun, right? Like there's a reason that the giraffe's neck is as long as it is. It's because these incremental evolutions are necessary. And we have to have, if clean capitalism, what we're in pursuit of, has to be inclusive of evolution, and not evolution as a way to capitalize on people vis-a-vis the iPhone, where they're like, look, we've now made it color. You know what I'm saying? Like it's not evolution. That's you capitalizing on what you think I think evolution is. It's not. You already knew that was going to happen. That's not natural. And so I'm interested in, which I think Ryan Coogler does an extraordinary job of this in the first Wakanda. I think the second Wakanda is actually the best Marvel film ever made. Fight me.
How many do we have? Two?
It's two.
Got two.
But that one,
Like that one.
it's and I'll explain it one day. It's extraordinary when you contextualize what he accomplished in that. Outrageous. But in that first one, he went, I'm going to imagine a world that was never colonized, where people who lived in nature continue to coexist with nature and use nature as their primary form of technology, which is the excavation of this mineral. He said, Black Panther protects us, but Black Panther only has one superpower. It's not that he's strong, he got the strength of the plant. It's not that he can do all this stuff, he's wearing a suit. His only superpower is that he can talk to his ancestors. And so it's ancestral access. And you're telling me that imagination isn't possible? And I go, I think it could be, because what ancestral knowledge is access to one's history. We don't have that right now. What living in nature and intuitive with nature and using nature as a subset of your value system is, we don't have right now. We live in tenement houses.
Yeah. So you did two dope things with the question. You set the basis, because I don't think that the equator is what we should be seeking out.
No.
Because I agree with the idea that, or at least personally, I share the idea that to get the best out of your experience as a human is to exist within a push and pull throughout that time and find your way to whatever feels like right, like in your spirit, right? And so that's why I think it's sometimes counterproductive, the way that we're kind of socialized to think about, I guess, existentialism, because I think that the way we've been socialized is to imply that there is one way. So my question then, inside of what I was just hearing about your second part about Wakanda, do you feel there is an assertion that that is the way, right? Like, so because other people have access to their histories or a version of it, right? And it's led us here. So is the assertion that there is one way or a way, right, to commune and to exist here? Or is the assertion that you should find the way that I guess feels right to that group at that time? You know what I mean? Because I often think about, for me, well, I'll hold this thought, but I'll just add it for context, that there's a certain level of coexisting or collaboration between like revolution and like imagination, or what's the word that they use to talk about the Enlightenment? Like this awakening,
Like
right?
a renaissance.
Yeah. Renaissance is the word I'm looking for. So they have a relationship that sometimes makes them be very distant, but sometimes suggests that they need each other in order to find a way to the way. So is Ryan Coogler suggesting that access that you were talking about to our ancestral knowledge, or what do people call that? They call it something too. Like there's a name, like you might see like 19 Keys talk about, but this ancestral knowledge that exists. Is that the assertion that that is the way, or is the idea that we should find these myriad ways?
I know this is going to sound soft, and I don't mean for it to, so I'll try to explain it. But I think it's both.
Yeah, you got to explain it. So you think it's both? You got to, yeah.
So,
people say that to say things are both is to not have a point.
That's why I prefaced it the way I prefaced it. Because an acorn is still a tree. Do you feel what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. You can look up and see a live oak, and it's sprawling in all directions. It's beautiful and enormous, and it blocks out the sun, but it's still an acorn. Mm-hmm. That big. So two things can exist in the same space, as I understand it. When I say those two things need to be both, I think ancestral knowledge is the acorn, and it's saying to you, there is an encoding of a lot of information that will translate into a growth for you that'll be far more expansive. It's going to translate into the type of tree you're going to be. It doesn't tell you that like you're going to do this or it's going to do that. It's going to code you in such a way that you can grow further and wider than you would otherwise. Okay? But the growing itself, all of that, is an act of what's happening around you in real time. It's the whole concept of nature versus nurture. The minute that you start to grow, you're reacting to your reality first. And that reality is going to be speaking to you and helping you to make decisions, helping you learn. But if you have that knowledge base, your reaction is going to be slightly different. So instead of going this way, you might go that way. Instead of thinking this, you might think that. Instead of feeling like you need to feel unworthy, you might feel worthy and have audacity to go and do this. And it's going to change those trajectories, so to speak. And then you become an archetype for your son as a part of that same ancestral knowledge that I'm talking about. Even if it's literally happening in front of him in real time, in real life. And then that becomes a different pathway. Simultaneously, your son's looking at you and going, my dad did this, I can do this. He doesn't have all the knowledge that you have yet. He's just watching you move through the world. That's the other part of it, is that if you've got archetypes of people around you that are doing extraordinary things, wondrous things, it is, I think, a pathway for you to access something higher. Simultaneously, by following those archetypes, you will find that they have had access to all this ancestral knowledge anyway. And so that'll take you back to that same place. And so the acorn and everything that's in that acorn is still in the tree.
Interesting.
It's still in the tree. And so I think it has to be both. I think about this stuff all the time, man. Like, my ancestry, as I understand it, ends in South Carolina. And yet I know that my people come somewhere in West Africa. I hear everything from Sierra Leone to, Cote d'Ivoire, like a little bit further south. I've heard Congolese, and we come out into the coast for all these different things. And I believe that if I knew that, it would affect me in a completely different way. I read this once, listened to Dr. Cebo say, or I read a thing that he said, which was, if you know where you come from, you know to eat those foods and what they'll do to your body, foods that grow there. You know that I don't know any of that. Yeah. So how could I be architecting a best version of myself to make those decisions in my regular day-to-day life? Do you understand? And so I think it has to be both. I don't want to continue. I mean, I have to, but I would rather do as much excavation of my history as aspiration for my future. I want to be moving in both directions, if that makes sense. I want to be rooting and rising at the same time. And so I think it has to be both. And that ancestral knowledge, I think that's what Cougar was trying to do in that film, is he was going, firstly, our first relationship with life is with our family. And so familial life means everything to the Wakandans. The second is our relationship with nature, relationship with the ground itself, right? And I think about this all the time. When we see right now, we're trained to see someone in what they call second or third world, and they don't have shoes on, and they don't have a shirt on, and the sun's on them, and they don't have suntan oil, or I don't know what. We don't require that, but whatever it is required. And I think, I'm walking around in shoes on asphalt. My feet don't get to touch the soil. And I'm very aware that electromagnetic currents run through the soil that need to go through my body, right? I'm very aware that I'm wearing clothes all day, covering half my body. I'm not getting that sunlight that's supposed to be bouncing off of my skin and being absorbed into it. I'm not getting the activity. I'm not getting the movement. I'm not getting the engagement with nature. I'm not getting the awe of seeing mountains and seeing, great expanses. I'm not running around with bison and horse. I'm not seeing that. I'm looking at TV with Jordans on, and I'm chilling. And I just believe that isn't my heritage. That is something that was given to me. And I want to have access to that heritage. And I want to feel the elements of all those things flowing through me and to my children.
But to a person who that seems like heritage too, right? So let's put let's just say an American. Just say an American, right? So to a person who identifies as an American, some of those things you said are signifiers of success.
Indeed.
Right? At this game of life, right? And they may be culturally, or, I'm doing air quotes for listeners, they may be consumed as these signifiers of health, etc., in terms of this game of life. What do we say to those folks?
Oh, I can't wait. I can't wait. Can't wait. Listen to me.
You know what I mean? Because I hear you, right? I hear you, I feel you. And I think we're on the same wavelength there, right? But I also think about the fact that while we exist, so do they, right? In that same trajectory of what you're saying, but that is what culture is to them.
All right. So, firstly, I'm with you. I got 8 pair of J's at the house. I don't got 8, but I got J's at the house. I'm good. But I also work in the luxury space. I own a creative agency that only works with luxury hotels. That's it.
Okay.
They only work with luxury hotels. So luxury is like the height of it. And I'm not talking $400 or $500 a room. I'm talking $15,000 a night type of stuff. And I can tell you for certain, there are 2 things that a luxury place will sell you. Just 2. Nature. They're going to put you with the most beautiful view on a beach. They're going to put you up in the mountains. They're going to put you on a lake.
Yeah.
And they're going to sell you time.
Is that because they know that those, even they, you know what I'm saying? Because that's the thing. Because and that's why you have to say, this is going to sound soft.
That's why I have to give you that I have to say it because
I feel like, because I was trying to give you some pushback.
It's not soft.
Something that no matter how much more successful I've gotten, right, come to more so realize, at least from those folks who I may place on pedestal, because I know we can say all we want, we don't have like idols, yada, 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 but, we have folks that we put on pedestals. Like what they have come to find is like, for instance, so you put J. Cole up there, right? And people are flabbergasted with some of the things that he's been doing in the past, let's say 2 to 3 years, whether it's freeforming his hair, his insistence on blurring the lines between luxury, his insistence, and I wanted to ask you a little bit about where you think the state of design is, right? But his insistence on like wearing like those, they might have been off-white J's, right? Who is someone else who's playing with like luxury and how it exists in the mind. But then also like prioritize his health, like literally saying, I'm not going to do this battle anymore because I don't believe in it. We have a reluctancy because, and I also think that when I first posed that question to you, a listener or viewer might have thought we were talking about white folks.
Yeah.
And you were like, no, I have 4 pairs of Jordans. No, we are all in that.
It's an us in that. It's an us in that. Yeah.
Of this. And so, yeah, it's like they know.
They knew.
We think that to be in that level, like you said, to have these conversations about a $15,000 a night room is to be in access of something that I can't know. But in reality, with that $15,000 a night room is literally giving me access to is something that I already know, both to be true from experience, from literally being a child running around outside, right? But then also something that you assert that we also know inherently.
We do, because it was the abundance mindset that we had originally.
That makes the abundance question much more sexier to me than just posing this idea that's, I think some people, so for instance, like a Dr. Umar poses this idea of, like Black folks come from abundance, but you don't explain it. And I think that's where a lot of us fall. And I think that's for everyone too. Like when you're talking about humans experiencing their culture, right? I think there is a certain part of most cultures where someone just gives you the surface level of it. You know what I mean? And I'm not saying this of his work, but they are simultaneously putting forth this idea of, I am someone who knows all the ins and outs of it, right? So surely I would give you that, right? But now, like, for instance, what do you think of this, of like people putting a paywall on knowledge in general? You know what I'm saying? Like this exists, right? Even someone as lauded as like Dr. Sebi, right? Has a relationship with that. So how do you feel about that? And what does that say about value too, in the grand scheme of things? I had my thoughts on it. But
Yeah, I mean, I really struggle with it. I don't think any knowledge should be gate kept in that way, at all in general. But I understand why they're doing it. Again, I know I'm going back to this a lot, but that whole mindset of scarcity is translated into how we operate every single day. We only have enough to survive, and so we're doing survival-based reactions to everything around us. And you're just trying to, even in the animal kingdom, like the whole idea of peacocking is an attempt to get someone else to see you, or to scare someone off, or to get someone to come to you. It's all about these interpersonal survival instincts. And I'm saying that there was a moment in our history we weren't thinking about any of that stuff. And the things that now the wealthiest are spending all of their time doing are the things we were doing before. Art, highest value, selling artwork for millions of dollars. Who do you think was creating all of this stuff to begin with, right? Health, wellness, the whole concept of even the literal ceremonies that we used to do, they are doing. And trust me, bro, it is not just us. You go to Mexico, they're doing all of the same, they're paying for the same stuff. They're extracting those same things, right? Access to nature. When I say access to nature, I don't mean exclusively like I'm just lounging under a tree. It's knowledge of nature, right? Knowledge of what plants can serve you, what plants don't serve you, where to fish, how to think about fishing, how to skin a buck, how to hunt a buck. You don't know any of this stuff, but you did. You knew it better than everyone. Everyone. The ability to lie on your back in the middle of the night, look up the stars every single day, and be able to calculate the movement of the earth. You knew that. You don't know it now, but you knew it. And that's the highest quantifiable thing right now in the concept of value. That's what Elon is doing right now.
But so where does true progress lie then, right? So because I'm just thinking, right? Like we have, or at least I have, a certain different. So for me now, those things are progress. Mm-hmm. Like to look at myself and challenge myself about myself daily is like a part of what I view as progress. However, I was socialized here to also think progress is I get to drive, a BMW. Progress is the fact that the BMW can drive itself. You know what I'm saying? Like we have, it has come to, for me, simultaneously be outside of myself. And I think that a lot of what all humankind is doing seems to be headed towards things outside of the self. It feels like it's happening more now than ever. This is a concept that me and my wife talk about, right? Well, folks out there are crazy, or this is different, right? But I also see the trail of that being something that was the same in the 20s for progress, that progress was outside of their selves, or there was this insistence that it be outside of their selves. So where does true progress lie? I guess in your idea or in your own personal life, where would you situate progress? And what are the hurdles we have to look out for on our road to where you would situate progress?
I find myself in a degree of a struggle. And I say it because we're on a trajectory that isn't something that I began. And so to continue to progress on that trajectory is to suggest I'm progressing someone else's desires. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I'm pushing forward someone else's desires. And so I think I kind of want to pull away from that. And that is the opposite of progress. And in so doing, it's resetting a trajectory.
Okay.
Right? I want to reset the trajectory. And I think it begins in a lot of ways, like what you said. You said, I want to be able to be thinking outside of myself. But outside of yourself, it means what? I think it means, how do we find a technology in our collective consciousness? How do we find a technology in our unity, right? How do we find evolution in our unity? This is what they were trying to do in the 80s when everyone was rocking the African pastors, right?
Yeah.
This is what they were trying to do in the 70s. This is what they were trying to do in the 60s. This is trying to do in the 40s, trying to do in the 20s. They're going, yo, we got to get together. And every time they tried to get together, they would get divided. Every time they get divided, they find other reasons for division. And so when I imagine progress, it feels a little bit like this. It feels a little bit like we're on the same wavelength, right? Yeah, we're on the same wavelength. When we walk out of this room, yo, we're on the same wavelength, right? And we're sort of pooling together the minds existing on that same frequency in order to figure out what evolution looks like for that trajectory of those people. Right now in America, as I said, that when I talk about a scarcity mindset, like it's not just hoarding, it's also dividing everything up. There's a reason that whole group of people got together in Europe and divided up Africa the way they did, is partially to draw lines between the nations so they couldn't actually gather up, and then they divided the country so they can extract minerals specific to their needs. That division stands here, right? I still feel brotherly connection to every brother I interact with. Every single one I feel. I look them in the eye. When I walked into the airport today, I had this guy shine my shoes. It was my man. Love this dude. I mean, this dude right there felt like my uncle, right? Felt like family to me.
Yeah.
And there is a connective tissue that I don't think we've had the opportunity to properly, a muscle we've gotten to exercise enough and push forward and figure out what do we want the trajectory of that to be. And it's to be inclusive of all black women, all black men in this country, specific to the American experience, and go, where do we want to be? Us. Not where do we want to be in the context of this white contrast? Where do we want to be? Us.
So me and you were talking about this when I picked you up. And I was like, you said somebody was talking about safety, right? We're talking about where we are and we're talking about safety. And I was like, yeah, but there's a feeling that we kind of move with that I think that people don't understand. Like I think it is presumed that we are saying that I am just as hard as these folks are here. They didn't stop making weapons when they made yours, right? But that's not what I think we're alluding to. What we're alluding to is that I intuitively have these same feelings or have had these same feelings as the folk you claim I won't be safe among.
Yes.
And because I know that intuitively,
yes,
I am safe. And I understand that you don't understand this because you don't have access to it. Right?
That's it. That's what I'm talking about. That's it.
Right?
That's it.
But okay. All right.
That intuition is ours. That's our heritage, I think. And that's the epicenter, I think, of our spiritual power as well, is this ability to intuit.
Do other folks have access to that?
I think
like, you know what I'm saying? Like, so do white folks have access to that? Do Asian folks have access to that? Or do they have their own versions of it? You know what I mean? It can be. I feel like it has to be.
I think it can be both, but I think there is a uniqueness to our culture and our experiences that is, if you think of it like quite literally like stations on a radio dial, like everybody's got a station, but there are some stations that you tune into and you're like, yep, that's me right there. You know it and you feel it. Bro, like this is so funny to me.
Because I would imagine they have those same conversations, you know what I'm saying? To a certain degree. You know what I mean? But then there's also, because I would say, right, I was asking myself this, at some point you might have to draw a line when you're talking about the origins of the frequency. Yeah. Right? That would maybe make different frequencies, I guess, more powerful because they come from, you know what I mean? They are closer. So if everything is about abundance, right? Even this universe, like, so even the idea of, for some folks, the birth of this universe is this explosion into abundance. I would wager, or I have been socialized to believe, that everything that is closer to that source energy is better than everything that's farther. Like, in its ability to access said frequency.
Pure is the word.
You get what I'm getting at? Right?
It's like without any other...
And not that this is, because I think there's an assertion. So while we were talking, I was thinking about Nietzsche's will to power, right? And before he builds up to the will to power, or in the book, that one part of the history that is Nietzsche, right? But in this particular book, I can't remember the exact one, he's saying that one of the things that humans generally do is decide on an ideology, and then through their will, decide on a way to get that to as many folks as possible, right? So I don't think the frequency, or my suggestion is not that the frequency has an agenda like that. My assertion is that the frequency just is, and that certain folks might have more access to it in that essence of purity. So that it doesn't have a, you know what I'm saying? I think we have been trained to think that this energy has an agenda.
It can't. That's not how nature works. And so if that energy is a part of the natural world, you're living your life, the life that you live, and your desire to become the best version of yourself in any other form in your life get you closer to that, to that level. And you think of it right now, we think of it in terms of our finance. You work hard, you make enough money, you'll be rich. You think of it in your relationship with God. If you pray every day, you be closer to God, you'll be spiritual. The frequency, I think it's the same way. Is like, how are you grounding yourself in a sense of truth relative to your history, relative to who you are, and relative to your connection to other people? There's a reason that Black people, in particular, uniquely, when you're having a conversation, I've had people say this to me, like, why you say that? And we talk to me, I'll be like, yeah, I feel you. And I go, why are you saying you feel me? What does that mean? And I'm like, I don't know, but that's what we say. I feel you. I feel what you're saying to me. Yeah. I hear you, but I feel you.
Yeah.
It's a real thing. And I'm going to give you an example. There's a tribe in the continent of Africa called the Dogons. Have you ever heard of them before?
Yep.
So the Dogons, when the French came to visit them, it was in the 1500s.
Well, can I just say this first? Dark-skinned poet, slam poet.
Saul Williams. It's not hypothetical. It's not conceptual. These are real things. These are real things. Yeah. So the Dogons, when the French came to visit the Dogons, they were brought into the tribe. They did the ritual so they can get access to some of the knowledge of the Dogon. And what they did was they drew on the ground. They said, this is where we're from. And they drew the stars. And they showed them, they said, right here in this map, we're from this star. And next to it is the heaviest object in the universe. And that's where our people are from. Okay? They drew this out. This is in the 1500s. Fast forward to the 1980s. They revisit this document. What they were pointing at the time was not visible from the planet. It was Sirius B, the brightest star in the sky. They told him it was the brightest. It was right there in the sky. When we developed technology to be able to see it, they could see it. And next to it is a
neutron star,
a collapsed star, which in its collapsing became one of the heaviest objects in the universe. And they identified that. And when they asked them how they knew that information, they said, we can feel it on our skin. Do you know how extraordinary that is? You know how extraordinary that is?
Come on, man.
I'm like, yo. And so I think that there's something to be said. You know, there's a myriad of conspiracies about how melanin works and all that stuff. I don't know, but there's something to that.
What does it mean to be a Black man raised in a space that tells you everything is about scarcity, but to have that encoded in your DNA that it's not, and then to live 70 years, with that, you know what I mean? Because I think that's the question. And I was talking to Liz a little bit earlier about like the stages of awareness or wokeness that everyone seemed to go through in this. It's like a 10-year span, probably a 20-year span, but I'm just too young to have access to it. Prior to the decision of, or it felt like a decision by Black folks to say that Hotep is a negative thing, right? Prior to that, there were certain things that folks went through, like if you read Assata Shakur's autobiography, certain just a trajectory. You know, the first step is I go to the NOI because that's where I need to go. You know what I mean? And you keep going down there, and people get stuck in certain spaces of it, right? That I don't think allows them access to this abundance that we're thinking about.
in that question. So when I ask you that, that's what I think about, right? So like, what does that mean to be like, to be your ancestors' wildest dreams, and everything to tell you that that is not true, and then also to be an active participant in that telling to yourself?
I'll answer it with a question to you.
Because I'd be able to.
Who is the freest Black person you know, or don't know, but in your work?
In my world,
Even if it's a celebrity, if it's like anyone that's walking this earth, who's the freest Black person?
I can think. Well, I'll just say two people. Thank Henry. The owner of the store, I said that, and Jay-Z.
Okay, what makes him free to
you? Well, so I'll say Jay-Z, seemingly unlimited access to his time and his imagination. Probably wager the same thing for the owner. However, his knowledge of what to do with that time for himself that doesn't seem encumbered by anyone else's thoughts. And I want to hear why you asked that question.
Because I think the exercise in trying to access that within ourselves, part is knowing those around us who accessed it as well. The same way I'm talking about the ancestral knowledge, it's around you. But so when I think of the most free person I can imagine, free Black person, I weirdly think of Jaden Smith and Willow Smith.
Oh my God.
And I go, they're operating on a whole other level.
Did you ever see that meme that said that Black folks are uncomfortable with coming into contact with Jaden and Willow Smith because they have never seen with free Black children?
Not liking that, but yo,
that's they are. I said the reason that they are hard for us is we have never seen what free Black children do with their freeness, and what they forgot to, I think, include in that is like free for us too.
Yeah,
and the program was right. Well, because essentially one of the things that these two have championed is the fact that their parents allow them to explore.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's one of the first interesting things that we're not talking about in the conversation is we view the absence of our parents not allowing us to explore. Or we view our experience with our parents not allowing us that level of freedom, exploration, as normal. Yeah. So we're not even talking about the fact that we are stressed and any type of like thing that they awakening or like something that they discover. We are just flabbergasted by their ability to play. Yes, is what we're saying. Says yes, Jaden and Willow, because they said that the reason they are problematic is not because of anything that they have conclusion that they have arrived at, because they have arrived at many overdrive things. They are different people almost every other year. Yeah, it should be. Our issue is that we've never seen anything like it before. Not even in our own homes where we have children. And that is a much more interesting conversation than any joke anyone can say about Jaden Smith to me.
Yes,
is the fact that there are both people who have children, people who do not have children engaging in this conversation and saying that. So that means that you don't even allow that otherwise. You have children and the same opportunity to do this with your children. And the same blessing to see what conclusions they arrive at on this journey of humanity. But you have chosen not to.
Now, that's heavy. It's real heavy.
Yeah.
I'm going to show you something.
Mm-hmm.
Jay-Z is 50-something. On the source on 30s. Jaden Smith, Willow Smith in their 20s. But all three of them have a common.
Timed?
The ability to express themselves. That's it. That I go, wait a minute. The ability to express themselves. When I imagine Black culture, I imagine the color, I imagine the vibrancy, I imagine the energy, imagine the joy, its expression. And it's totally free. And so profound that it's the most valuable resource on this planet. It's the most valuable one with this physical expression, whether it's the intellectual expression or creative expression or playful. People see that and they go, we have to monetize the nada that, right? And I'm saying to decouple oneself from monetization of one's expression, just express yourself. Start there. Just start there. Go excavate the self. What is it that I want to say? How do I want to say it? And where do I want to say it? And just do it. Like actualize it. Which is to say, take something that does not exist in this world, bring it into this world, into 3 dimensions, in front of everybody. Do it repeatedly. Repeat it. And then you'll do something that's extraordinary. You'll start to believe that you have the ability to create nothing out of something out of enough. And I think that's a precursor to abundance. I'm like, that's it. So I love it. I love it. I love this conversation. This is I could vibe with this all day because that's it. I appreciate it, brother. Man, it's always an overall listen to Bill with you, man. Blessing is mine, and I'm gonna get you drinking whiskey soon.